and we'll just talk about logistics.
Right,
So everybody is on mute. We're going to mute people as they come in, but these past PLCs that we've had have been really active in terms of discussion in the chat. So feel free to chat in questions as we go along. We have Sheila, who will be taking a look at those questions as they come up and chiming in when it's appropriate. But we're basically going to drive this through about 6 questions that we put together. A lot of these questions, and just in terms of the interaction and the chat, these topics, the topic that we have picked for today, in terms of flexible options for students, whether it's the summer or whether it's the fall, that has come from our PLC. So we try to stay fresh with this. We try to let the PLC drive these topics and questions. So a lot of these have come inbound to us, and we've just pieced these together, and we kind of let our panelists do the talking on their experiences. And so we'll work through these slides. Can you take us to the next slide here, Sheila? So our panel participants today, we have Kelly Norwood, who is the director of our virtual academy. You may not know this about Edmentum, but we actually have a virtual academy. It's something that's growing exponentially every year in New Jersey and around the country. So she has been in the virtual teaching space and administrative space for a long time. So we're going to have Kelly on board. And then we have one of our district partners from Pinelands Regional School District, Gina Frasca, who has been working with us here at Edmentum for a long time, but also you know, we know she's had her fair share of challenges, had a school, an actual building closed last year, and then got into this year rocking and rolling, and then we had COVID sneak up on us. So Gina's has a ton of flexible options that she has going in her district, and we're going to let her talk about that a little bit. But one thing, just to kick us off, the one thing that we're hearing, and this topic is resonating with us, and we're hearing from our school districts, is we need to have virtual options for the fall in the case that parents have a refusal where they don't want their students to return to an actual physical building. So that's a big concern if we don't have virtual support up in place. And we have several options that you know, we're going to talk about a little bit in the discussion, but I think most importantly today is going to be driven by past experience and current experience and adaptations to that. So we want to hear some of those plans and get that sharing happening within this virtual PLC. So definitely put those ideas into the chat. We'll monitor that. You know, we'll take it away from here and get into questions. Real quick, I wanted to introduce your New Jersey team. So Sheila, let's take a look at the next slide. So we have Lindsay Foglio, Sheila Miller. They are actually based in New Jersey. They are partnership managers. You'll see them at trade shows when those come back at our conferences. And then we also have myself and David Hanslick. We work out of Minnesota, close to our Minneapolis office here, the home base for Edmentum. But we work virtually and head into New Jersey from time to time. So that's our team. And then I think with that, Sheila, if you don't have anything else to add, I think we can jump into questions for our panel.
All right, so I don't see if Kelly Norwood has jumped on yet. Kelly, have you jumped on? Okay, maybe Dave Hanslick, would you mind just shooting her over a quick note with the presentation that went out yesterday? So first off is, what does planning look like for the fall without direction from the state? And some of you jumped on the call a little earlier, might have heard our discussions about how little direction there really is right now. and how planning has been all over the place. Gina, do you want to share with how you're trying to navigate through the waters and plan for fall?
Sure, I would love to unmute myself. Hi, everybody. I'm just looking at, I just put a bird feeder out and I'm seeing some New Jersey goldfinch birds for the first time. So I was very
Hi.
excited about that. So I think, I'm a really big fan of Edmentum. We've been using, actually we started using Study Island in 2006. And we've seen lots of success with our junior high school, which was a 7, 8, 9 building, and now it's a 7, 8 building. So, flexible options right now are key. And I feel that whatever September brings, we have to have all of these systems in place so that the teachers have flexibility, whether we're in a brick and mortar building or if we're doing virtual, remote learning. We need to be ready on the fly with anything that, we face as we move forward. We can go back to school in September and have all of our students with us, and then in October we may be out again. So we're kind of looking at those things. I think what Matt said before about students not coming to the physical building for health concerns, parent concerns. We actually, our DOE in New Jersey sent out a survey to all parents in the state and asked our parents, are you sending your students to school in September if we open up? So that survey went out last week, and I'm really curious to see what the results are, because we may have half of a population of students, and we may have learned, I think that word hybrid keeps coming up as, and one of our goals at Pinelands has been personalized learning. So I kind of look at this as an opportunity to really drill down into what personalized learning really is and how you can provide supports for every single individual student on their level, whatever their strengths are, whatever their challenges are. And I think that's what Edmentum has really helped us with, in providing a lot of different resources for students where they are and really helping them. And also giving the teachers a lot of great data and a lot of direction as to, what we can do to kind of keep kids on track. One of the, I think it's an opportunity is not having the state testing this year, which is always, it's always a double-edged sword when we have state testing, because, you have to stop, drop everything and do all of the testing. And, it's always great to get that data back. But right now, when we don't have it, it's actually helped us to propel things forward quicker. We don't have to wait for these test results. We're actually looking at local data, which has really been better for us, because we're looking at multiple measures, we're looking at all different assessments, but it's nice to not have to wait for that state data. And I honestly hope that we start moving away from that, because this has been kind of liberating in actually using our own data to make the decisions and to plan for September. Was that too much?
That is great. Yeah, I think the flexibility piece is key, and you've definitely built up an arsenal of options. Gina, can you talk a little bit about any anticipation you have from what you're hearing? If you do go back to, let's say, brick and mortar for next year, what does that look like, and what, do you have a sense of where families might be in
We have
terms of letting kids go back?
We've actually created our schedule for next year in the hopes that we're all going back. But one of the things that we're really focused on is how many students are allowed to go on a school bus. That's kind of driving, no pun intended, everything, because last time we checked, only 16 students were allowed on a school bus that usually fits 50 students. So that's really 1/4 of the students that we have. So we kind of just said, okay, if 1/4 of the students can come in to the building, does that mean that once every 4 days the students will show up to the building? And then will they have online options on the days that they're not in the actual physical building? So those are the kind of things that we're talking about right now. We would like it to be more often, but we don't really know how many students we can actually get to the building. We're looking at our populations like special ed and basic skills. We want them to come to the building more often just because they need added support. And there are some students that may be in some higher level courses that may only have to come in and see their teachers once a week to kind of get like just that little FaceTime, and then here's your online options. So really, again, it goes back to flexibility, differentiation, that personalized learning. Yeah. We found that, I think, and I'm sure a lot of you have similar experiences, we have found that some students that were not engaged in a brick and mortar setting, talking about seat time, are doing really well with remote learning. All of a sudden they're getting A's, and they're up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing their work and doing it on their own time and on their own schedule, and that's working for them. So we have found that some kids are better at this than others. Obviously, it's a little bit harder for the younger kids because they don't have the executive functioning skills of time management and those kind of things. But we're definitely talking about, if plan A, B, C, D, and E as to what's going to happen. And so we have all of these different levels of planning right now. Our governor just said that now we can have, 250 people in an outdoor environment. So I don't know what that means for an indoor environment. So again, every day we're faced with different parameters, different executive orders, and we're just kind of, going with that, whatever it is that day.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing. There was a comment in the chat before we go on to this question about the survey, that there was some question on how helpful that would be. So I know we've talked to other teams throughout the country, and there are districts that are doing their own surveys to students to get a handle on what it will look like for their students. I mean,
I think that's a really good idea. I really think that's a good idea because honestly, yes, coming from the state, I love this comment. It's a horrible survey because you could take it as many times as you want. You don't have to live in New Jersey. That's so true. I mean, how valid is the data that's coming in? So it's probably not a bad idea. I like that suggestion of actually coming up with our own survey for our own parents and kind of seeing where they are. I know there are some parents that are emailing us like, please open, I can't do this anymore. And they're really having a new appreciation for educators, which is the sunny side of this, and them seeing the work that the educator side does. But then there are people that are, more afraid of sending their students to an environment like that. I know we did get CARES money, which is, I forget what the acronym is, but it's for coronavirus aid kinds of things. And we're planning on buying masks for every single student. We're planning on, making sure that, that we have directional, where people are supposed to walk and things like that. So we don't want to have to talk about those kind of things in education, but unfortunately, cleaning supplies and things like that. So it's not fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting how, we kind of have our own little microcosm here within the state. It's similar to the balance between the federal government and states, and then now we have this on our state level and individual school districts having to make decisions for themselves. Is there, I mean, other than, well, and this actually kind of feeds us into the second question in terms of supports. I mean, other than, programming and platforms, are you getting feedback from the community of anything else that need to be in place, whether it is the cleaning supplies or masks or transportation? Are you getting anything else from your community or from your own surveys from the community?
One of the biggest areas of need, I would say, is special education. What programs are available for students that, autistic students, multiply disabled students. There's not a lot out there for some of these really special needs areas, and they need a person They're not going to be independently working online. They need something that's very interactive, that's going to meet their needs and help them to grow at their pace. So there's a kind of a hole there for those kind of just very specific programs for special needs students. That's a big area right now.
And I think on our previous panels, we've been talking about the special education. So you talked a little bit about the supports that need to be put in place to ensure student success, which is interesting. We weren't even thinking the answer would be having to mark the floors when students come home, but that's just talking to the enormity of what needs to be planned for the fall in terms of scheduling buses and everything. In terms of having to support the students this coming fall, you have lots of different scenarios. How are you building supports in to help those be successful in terms of the learning for the students? I know everyone was kind of put in shock, teachers and students and parents, with what happened now. How are you going to help that not be the case for the fall?
I think communication is key. I see this in the chat, the training for the caregivers. I think that's really huge. Like, how are we supporting the people at home that are supporting our students? We've had the philosophy of autonomy for our teachers, because a lot of our teachers are actually parents of younger age students that are not only doing remote learning with our students, but also helping their own children at home. So we didn't want to give them a schedule per se, where you have to be online with your period 1 at 8 o'clock and those kind of things. We've made it so that they could create their own schedules that meet the needs of their students and also address their own children. And as educators, I think we have a little bit of a leg up with our own children, but not really, because they don't listen to us as much. And I think it's hard, but also caregivers that are not educators, I think we need to give them more support and almost maybe do something over the summertime to prepare. If we are going to be doing more online, really giving some supports, maybe some online virtual, tips or something like that for, providing a study space for the students, giving them breaks and the social emotional piece, because that's something that we were just so quickly thrown into this that, the parents didn't even know what Google Classroom was. I remember that first week we were sending out all of these videos on how to use Google Classroom. So yeah, we need to be better at supporting the entire educational community, especially if we're going to be online, and letting them maybe giving them tutorials about, like, these are the programs your student has available to them. Here's the parent perspective. Here's how you can help support them. So I think that's an area that we have to be better at.
That's a good point. I'm sure all the homeschool parents out here appreciate it too, as well as the teachers for fall. So number 3, what scenarios do you envision needing virtual options for students? And we kind of talked about this at the very beginning, where it's the AB days and the various options. Do you foresee, or are you planning that should you go back, that it might have to go back to where we are today, where it's full virtual?
I think possibly. Honestly, I think we need to revamp our entire way we do schooling in the future, because seat time, I was in a workshop yesterday and they were saying that we're measuring success using the wrong end, meaning we measure success by seat time. And, is it really important for a student to sit down for 7 hours a day? Is that really the best scenario? So I do think it's going to kind of open up some doors and give some more flexibility. But I think that students, especially at the high school level, should have options to do more virtually. As they get older, they can, choose to, maybe they want to, do they really have to go in front of a teacher every single day in order to, succeed. And that's not for everyone. Again, it's something that we have to look at, but the vision of what is the future of schooling, should it be the same? If we can go back to normal, should we go back to normal? And I don't know if that's really, something that we want to do.
So
Yeah,
maybe,
Gina,
go ahead, Matt.
well, I wonder if this, the past 3 months has kind of forced us all to, I mean, I don't wonder that. I know that it's forced us all to really reimagine and be creative. And I think that's what we do as educators is deal with the consequences of whatever whatever is thrown on us, and we adapt and we learn to teach. So I just wonder, in terms of training, I think that's a really interesting question about training. And I know we have some limitations in terms of how much time can be spent on that, whether that's coming from the teachers union or coming from, local school systems. Do you anticipate upping that professional development piece, whether it's your own or bringing consultants? Is that something that's changing within the district?
Well, obviously we're doing a lot more with online PD, and you guys have always been ahead with that. Like, we didn't even know how to Zoom before this.
It's been fun to watch everybody's learning curve with Zoom over the past 3 months.
Exactly. You were always like, okay, we're going to send you a link. And we're like, oh no, it's not going to work. But now we're doing it 10, 12 times a day. So I think that's definitely opened up some doors too. We actually had a virtual job fair yesterday that we were part of. And then the person who ran it actually called me this morning and said, I want some feedback on it. And for a second, I felt like it was the Wild Wild West because people were coming to this virtual booth. And I don't know if they were just cutting and pasting, like, hi, I need a job in this, And, but when you look at it, you say to yourself, you know what? It was nice that we could all be in our homes and have this opportunity to meet people from all over the country. Who are relocating to South Jersey, who want to, get a job. We wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I think it's opening up those kind of opportunities just in general for education. But we're definitely going to need to revisit. I think that, sometimes it becomes difficult when we have contracts that say that there should be 7 periods a day and they should be 47 minutes long. And, those kinds of things really kind of box us in and don't allow for some of this flexible or hybrid kinds of, scheduling for the students. So again, we're going to have to rethink, what is our priority? And again, I go back to the student. What does the student need?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, and it sounds like for the most part, you're not waiting for the state to tell you what to do, or the county, or what. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how much, because I talk to districts all over the state. Some are kind of waiting, or, they've got, like you said, plan A, B, or C, or even H. But it doesn't sound like you're waiting. You're full steam ahead on. I mean, you're not just going to have a set of options. You're going to be able to pull the trigger on any one of those, depending on what.
And we found out, I think it was March 13th. That was a Friday the 13th, March 13th at like 2:30 that we found out that we needed to move toward this. And as you guys said in the beginning, we had, I think, 3 really difficult years before this year. I felt really bad because our current seniors haven't even been in the high school because they were in the junior high one year. We were on split sessions the year before that. So actually our teachers were really, really good at Google Classroom before all of this. So yes. I felt like we had a little bit of a leg up because we had been literally, we had a screw fall on a student's head at the high school. We had to close that day, put all of the students in the junior high, split schedule, teachers sharing class. So we kind of had about 3 years of very volatile situations that caused us to jump into some of these, these virtual platforms, and, they're only getting 4 hours a day at school. So we should extend the learning through virtual platforms and things like that. So that helped us in some ways become a little bit more, I guess, flexible and resilient. And we were ready on that Monday. We were ready to we all had our Google Classrooms ready, at least to get through that week. And then we were planning, to move forward. So.
Yeah, actually, I think we have some time, but can you talk a little bit about the previous years and how you kind of built into that? Because I remember texting, I left you alone that first week, and I think I texted you at the end of the week, just how's it going? And you're like, we've been doing this for a little bit.
And
Yeah.
I think not only are our teachers resilient when it comes to these kind of things, our students have been. Because imagine we had grades 8 through 12 in a junior high building for a whole school year. And it was pretty interesting. The year before that, we had split schedules. So the high school kids came in the morning. I called it the changing of the guards. They all left at about 11:30, 12 o'clock. And then we had the junior high kids come in. The junior high kids came in for the second half of the day. We used to pledge the flag at 7 in the morning with the high school kids. And then we did homeroom with the junior high kids at the end of it. So we would pledge at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I felt like it was Groundhog's Day. But, and it was interesting when all of the high school teachers were leaving and the junior high teachers were coming in, and that was like very busy time in the middle of the day. So, and then the buses came, and, the high school kids left, the junior high kids got let off while the high school kids went out the other door. So we had one group coming in the door, one group going out the door. So again, it was kind of like and I thought the most interesting thing about when we all had to be in one building was teaming up the teachers, like what high school teacher are you going to put in what classroom? I think we did a really, really good job of pairing them up and knowing their personalities. And we said, here's your new roommate. We had this chart, but we were kind of used to doing things on the fly. For the last 3 years because of our building. We had a $53 million referendum to fix the high school building, and they actually the construction people thought that we could have the students and staff in the building while they were doing these renovations, and that's obviously what went wrong. So again, we just, we were really ahead. We were really, really ahead when it came to just like flipping the switch and being ready for whatever.
Yeah, it's almost like you were already in that flexible mindset. So it was just like, yeah, okay.
So
here we go.
We do have some questions, Gina, in terms of, I know you were just talking about the split scheduling and how did that work for staff concerns from Gina DeLauro. And then as Dave wanted to hear a little bit more about how you addressed the flexible scheduling also.
So the split schedule, we had, like I said, the high school came in the morning. The junior high came in after noon. They did not have a lunch period. They had, we had grab and go lunches and breakfast. So the kids were really kind of allowed to eat in the classroom, it was really fine. And we just came up with a schedule. I believe we did an A day and a B day. So they had half their classes on one day, half their classes on the other day. And, they did have a lot of at-home kinds of things that they had to do more follow-up because there wasn't as much, we're calling it seat time. So we came up with that schedule really, really quickly and we implemented it. I'm looking at the next one. Hybrid planning school, but can you discuss more options? Again, we're kind of locked in with our teacher's contract with our 7-period day. I mean, we would like to do more with scheduling and allow for more flexibility with that. Obviously, that kind of goes out the door with these kind of scenarios. And I do think that the teachers have been really appreciative that we haven't locked them into a daily schedule. We asked them to do at least 1 or 2 virtual meetings with their classes each week. And really minimize the amount of work because the kids were really struggling in the first couple of weeks of remote learning and trying to juggle all of the different classes and make sure that they were, so we said give two or 3 assignments a week, assign them on Mondays, and then have everything due at the end of the week. So kids were starting to get used to seeing what they had for the week, kind of like coming up with their own way pacing, and we were kind of helping them pace, especially at the junior high level. And then, and then Fridays actually became our reflection day, or our day of wellness, we were calling it. We did try to incorporate a lot of social emotional supports, mental health supports. So Friday became more of a day to make up anything, to meet with your teacher, just kind of check in with your teacher and say, hey, how's it going? And not be as focused on the academic side of things, more of the wellness side of things. So I think that's been really, we call it Wildcat Wellness. And that's been really positive.
Oh, that's great, Gina. Thanks. And Elizabeth put in the chat, what are some options? And I know Gina's been using some of these, but in terms of the flexible planning, what Edmentum can provide is we've been working with a lot of districts around our courseware for the fall plan, so that it's an online platform for your 6 to 12 students, and it's able to allow teachers to use units from it. So in Gina's case, where they're maybe in for half a day and learning at home the other half, so the unit that they get assigned in social studies after their classroom day in social studies is online through our courseware program, and teachers can upload their own lessons in it as well. So that's one of the things that we've been doing in terms of flexibility. The other thing that, and Gina can talk to, is our Ed Options Academy. Matt kind of mentioned this in the beginning, that in all of these scenarios, regardless of how great a planning job you put forth, there is so much around the school refusal piece, whether it's because, to Gina's point, some students are thriving right now with the online learning, or it's because parents don't want to send their student back until there's a vaccine. That piece is the piece our academy teachers can address and have been addressing. And we've been working with districts in various different forms throughout the country in terms of not paying anything up front. It's kind of like an insurance safety net, so that when you do get to school and you think you have 10 students you have to accommodate that aren't going to walk through the door, but then realize, no, it's going to be 25, you're able to just seamlessly put them on with our teachers, and we'll do a full course load, and they will be New Jersey certified, and your teachers get to monitor their progress, see the interaction with the students. And that is, so those are just two of the ways to try and help with the virtual learning pieces in the different scenarios that we have.
Yeah, well, in part of the difficult place that a lot of school districts are in, the superintendents I'm talking to right now, if we have a quarter of students who find other options outside of that school district, that's a major gouge from that district's funding, right? So you lose a huge chunk of students. So what districts coming to us are saying, what can we do to offer these flexible options and keep them within our district? And so, we have some state virtual options. Students can go to private schools and whatnot, but what's going to make my school district as flexible and or competitive to keep students here for parents who are looking for other options? So that's where we can come in and partner. Compared to the loss of dollars that we would have for individual students, a small technology investment or having that safety net is going to keep those students there just for pennies on the dollar compared to what you're going to be losing. So that's what we're hearing, and that's where we're coming in to support that. And I think, Gina, your case with what you've been doing with credit recovery, you don't know at the beginning of the year how many students you're going to have. So we have the option where Gina actually has a post-pay license set up to where if she needs a student to get into the program, she has a week's notice of this student's falling behind and they need this credit recovery for, let's say, biology, so they can get that credit and we can keep them on track to graduate. she can put them in our system and fast track them towards that credit. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Gina, and how that
I think
systems
that's
work?
been an area that we haven't really been great at in the past, but this is the first year we were actually on a roll with this.
Yeah.
In the past, we had students that were passing the class but not meeting the attendance requirements. So we would kind of come up with these random ways to get kids to recover their credits. And I really wasn't comfortable with what we were doing in the past. So now, like, if they missed 21 days in biology, they had to go in and they had to make up whatever, how many days in biology to make up for that lost time. So again, it goes back to the individual, what the individual student needs. And I love the post pay because it's really hard to determine how many students are going to need something like this in September, August, whenever, when you're budgeting a year before it. But it's something available to us, and the guidance counselors know when to kind of hit the button and say, you know what, Gina needs, these 2 courses, let's push them out. They need this many hours. And it really, it again individualizes for the student to make up some of that time. And all of the courses are there, and they're all accredited. I feel confident that they're getting, the equivalency of attending school with these online courses and the online supplements. So I just feel more comfortable because when, push comes to shove, when the student is a senior and they're graduating, we have to certify that they've met these requirements for the state of New Jersey. So I really wasn't confident with certain students that they were, taking an online something to make up for time that they lost in either phys ed or something like that. So I definitely feel more confident that we're providing them with, whatever they need for that specific course that they're missing.
Yeah, no, and I I think that's important too, just to note, with those flexible options, with those virtual, connecting with the virtual teacher, or having the option of having your teachers come in and use our platform and our curriculum. You have that two-way street, depending on what students need. But ultimately, you're the one who puts that stamp, you put that Pineland stamp on this student has gained this credit and they're ready to go. And it's nice to hear that confidence is stronger compared to what's happened in the past. Do those students, in terms of just keeping them engaged, you said you've had students kind of stand out in this current situation. Even pre-COVID, did you have students then that maybe were more engaged, or
I think the one thing we deal with more and more every year is school anxiety. We don't really see why they don't want to come to school, but these are kids that are fully capable of doing the work, but coming to the building is causing them a lot of stress, anxiety. This is an option for them. And, for whatever reason, and we do have to get to the root causes of why they don't want to come, but, it could be related to bullying situation. It could be related to, a home situation. But if they could still meet the goals of the New Jersey standards through other ways, then why shouldn't we have that ability to, provide them with those options? And I know I did a survey with all of the students. I think it was like after week 3 of remote learning. And a couple kids said, I'm glad I don't have to come in. I'm getting my work done. I don't have to see people. I'm not saying that that's a healthy response, but some kids are just more, introverted. They don't want the socialization. We are educators. We want the socialization side of things, but some kids do not do well under those circumstances. So why, we should have the ability to provide them with these options to push out and make sure, and they're still under our watch and they still get to, participate in other things, in the junior high and the high school. But, if they can do the work online and they can do it on their own pace, then why shouldn't we have that option for them?
Yeah, and everybody real quick. So we have Kelly Norwood on with us. Kelly, can you hear me?
I can. I am so sorry. I'm coming to you
You're
late.
good. These are crazy times for Kelly. Just the amount of flexible options that we need to be able to offer districts around the country. So Kelly is one of the directors of our Ed Options Academy. Kelly, can you just talk a little bit more about what that handoff between school districts and Ed Options Academy looks like, and how you've been partnering with districts, especially under COVID adjusted terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me, everybody. And it's times in education we really haven't seen, obviously, and so we are really working to try to partner with districts and what that looks like. Things that we never thought we would have to have conversations around, and where at Options Academy, which is really a student information system and a learner management system paired with a highly qualified state certified teacher, where that fits into the need to ensure that all students can continue to learn regardless of their circumstance. And so we've seen quite a bit of districts looking for some flexibility in that, whether there are teachers of their own district that maybe are not feeling that going back into the classroom is something that is safe for either their own families at home or their current circumstance, but they love teaching and they want to continue to teach. And so really thinking about that virtual option for every district out there, and ensuring that those 10 or 15% that they're at this point even higher indicating may or may not want to go back into a classroom or building if that option is even available. How can you continue to service those students you care so much about that belong in your district and families, and those teachers that maybe don't want to come back, and how can we create a situation? And so Ed Options Academy has really tried to be innovative in that saying, well, we can use your district teachers with our content, train your teachers as we would our own teachers, provide a professional learning community for those teachers and some professional development so that they can become virtual expert teachers, and so that they're comfortable, their students can continue to learn and thrive. And with that, there's thinking about the whole child and some of the trauma and some of the stuff that they're coming with. And so really packaging the ability to provide that option. And if that's not even an option, is also saying, okay, we have teachers. We've got the teachers either to fill the gaps of maybe teachers that have left the district, or some of the offerings that they want to offer this year that they can't. That's always an Ed Options Academy. And then thinking about what happens if we're going in and we're going out and we're going in and we're going out, right? That's some of the prediction for next year. And how can Ed Options Academy support that? And so with our content, either with district teachers or our teachers, and that professional development aspect, we can continue to support that through our learner management system, which is very flexible, K-12, and then more importantly, even with our student information system. And so you have to think about that piece when it comes to virtual education, is how are all the stakeholders have visibility to what's happening inside that virtual classroom? What is the communication and feedback loops, and how can they monitor that? And so in that student information system that is part of Ed Options Academy, administrators, teachers, families can monitor a lot of that for accountability and visibility into what's happening virtually. So we're seeing all sorts of different options. Even for summer school, we're seeing a lot of accelerated opportunities to fill the gaps and decrease what used to be a summer slide, which is going to be much bigger, by offering Ed Options Academy for summer for many different purposes. As well as beyond into the fall. And so I always like to think, if you can imagine it now and you need support, and really what does that look like virtually, you need experts, you need consultants, and that's what we do every single day.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's there's a lot there, right?
I know.
No, but three very, when we're talking about, Gina had framed up earlier that, you got to have a plan A, B, C, D. So three options there, just to kind of boil down. Having a district place their teachers behind our platform is one. Having a district then utilize our New Jersey certified teachers and have students learn virtually, or a hybrid of those two. Three very easy turnkey options that we can provide. Now we're getting close to time here, and I want to try to land the ship here. It's kind of funny. I've been saying to a lot of my districts, it's like we're on a different planet every week here. So I'll try to land the ship on the current planet that we are living on. But just thinking about, and Sheila, you can move that to the next slide. Just thinking about these changes, we had discussed previously with Gina, with her staff kind of always being in that flexible mindset. How do you think these changes are going to benefit education moving forward? Is there any going back on this? And I'd love to hear from both of you guys. And I guess Gina, tell us a little bit more about how you think this is going to benefit your community.
So I think that, again, I go back to our mission statement of personalized learning, making sure that every single student has what they need for their specific strengths and challenges. We haven't always done that in the past. We've always kind of done the one size fits all model. You have the one textbook with, everybody's reading the same stories, but this kind of opens up the doors to making sure that students can feel included and have an inclusive environment with, I'm in an 8th grade English class, but maybe Gina's working on this and Kelly's working on that. And it's just seamless, and it just becomes more of a normal where students know that they're all working on different standards or skills, and it's okay. They're all kind of working on whatever areas they need to work on. So it's kind of opened up some differentiation. I come from an elementary background, and I think elementary people have an easier time differentiating because you have your set of students, where when you get to the high school level, everything becomes very content specific. And, I actually started putting those little kidney shaped tables in the classrooms in the high school, and, classroom libraries in high school English classes. And, that at first that was one thing I can share. It was very interesting when we had our high school teachers go to the junior high. One of our goals at the junior high was flexible seating. So when the high school teachers got to the junior high, they were just like, what is this madness? Why aren't there desks in rows? Why do we have couches? Why do we have these high top tables? Like, it was actually, that was probably the biggest thing that came from putting all of the teachers in one building, was them seeing that they had like the reading corners, or they had like different flexible seating options for the kids who like to stand up, God forbid, the kids were standing up and learning at the same time. But then when they got back to the high school, they were like, can I get, some high top, so they brought some of that with them. But at first it was like, where are the desks? Where are the chairs? Why aren't they in rows? And again, it's that, it's the thought of what does the individual student need? It shouldn't look like the same thing for every single classroom, every single student. So I think that is really the goal of education, is to truly get the kids to obviously work on what areas they need help in, and not just the one size fits all model. So I'm hoping to really, break down some barriers with this next phase, and hope that people, personally, this is my thought, I'm hoping the teachers kind of say, how do we have like a blended model? When we actually can be in the building every single day, no problem. But I want them to actually say, what? It wasn't bad when we had like the office hours, or like these other I'm hoping that they find the value in both sides of the coin and what works for individual students. I'm hoping that they really realize that the standing in front of the students is just not the answer anymore, and that we do have to look for other options for each individual student. So that's my hope for the future.
I love that. Yeah, and I just felt, as you're describing the change in your classrooms, I just personally felt more relaxed just hearing that. Just, that's so much easier. Doesn't have to be so hard, and it can be so much more flexible. So yeah, kudos. That's great. Kelly.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I know, you want to leave some time for questions at the end. So when I really think about the benefits of moving this really educational transformation forward, and I think of flexibility as one of the key things. And so as we all know, being former classroom teachers, including myself and building administrators, is that a lot of our current educational structure is that we've got to get through this amount of information by this amount of time because we've got so many high stakes accountability and testing. And as a classroom teacher, it's always that's the challenge is I've got kids here, here, and here, and how do I really meet them in this amount of time? And what about those kids that don't get it by that amount of time? And how do we not leave them behind? And how we accelerate these ones and how we meet the ones in the middle? And that's just always been a big struggle because we care so much, and that's why we go into education. And so what I love about the transformation to virtual, and obviously being, a virtual former teacher myself and now director, is what that provides for families and students. And a lot of really great things I think are going to come out of it. And I loved what Gina said in terms of the not one size fits all. And that's one of the most exciting things about technology and virtual education is really meeting those students where they're at and knowing what they need from you and being able to give them in their time, right? And so it gives me goosebumps to think about kids learning on their own time and having that flexibility that you don't have to know it by the end of the period. There still is, you have to know it by here, but that's okay. And then for those kids that get it right away, right? And they get it so quickly and we kind of leave them behind because we've got to pull these ones back up. And so those kids that get it early and right away, how we can accelerate and enrich those, but the ones that need a little bit more time and that light bulb to go out, they can celebrate that. They don't feel left behind or not adequate enough to where they end up hating school. It's really a rewarding and beautiful experience for kids virtually to be able to do that. And also really thinking about the piece of bringing families into education more and having them really have a voice and be a part of the educational system and have more visibility into what their kids are learning and why they need to know this and how this is going to impact them in the future. Because when they're virtual in their home, families seem to be a little bit more involved and want to know a little bit more and ask a lot more questions and really hold you sometimes to a higher standard. And we love that because they become more of really an active part. And even for the families that are not around for their kids, it's still an environment where they can thrive, whether it be a K-5 kid or a 6-12 kid. So I'm excited. I love also what Gina said is that it's going to create more innovation and creativity, and how when we go back to let's say we go back fully to brick and mortar, those teachers being really excited about the opportunities that being forced to go virtual provided them and that they could see being benefits, and how can they start to incorporate that. And so I love the blended because that's where we can kind of decrease those learning gaps, right, and bring students closer together by incorporating really technology is a game changer. And if this is going to open up that world and give kids one-on-one devices across the United States and provide some of that equitable access to all that, I think it could just be so incredible for kids.
Awesome. Sheila, did you see anything more in the chat? Do we have?
I don't believe we had any more new questions in the chat, but we do want to be respectful of everybody's time today. So we're almost at 2 o'clock. Kelly offered to stay on a little bit later and maybe talk specifically if you wanted to hear some more about how Edmentum can be that partner to help fill in the gaps this fall. She'd be glad to help with that. Our next panel discussion will be on June 24th. You're welcome to put in the chat some suggestions. I think besides special education, social and emotional learning has come up a lot too in our previous PLCs, and so that's probably going to be our discussion, but please go ahead and put those in the chat box so that we can get your feedback, because one of the other things your New Jersey team is planning to do is possibly pausing after our next PLC at the end of June and maybe doing a full day session in July, kind of maybe discussing equity or maybe discussing how things are going to change, and maybe we need to have another planning discussion. But again, we'll take that from your feedback, the direction that we want to go in. I guess before we close officially with that piece, I just wanted to see if Gina, did you have anything else that you wanted to share, because you are 3 years into this journey, so to speak, of having to deal with lots of different virtual scenarios over the last 3 years. Is there anything that you can give in terms of advice to everybody out there who's trying to juggle figuring this all out as they're moving forward? That was kind of just my last question to you.
I really want to congratulate everyone for how professional, how like they are so devoted to their students that I feel like people are working harder now with the remote learning situations, and trying to meet individual students and Zoom with them and talk to their parents. And it's tireless, but it just goes to show you that we're all in it for the right reasons. We're here for the kids, and it's really no matter what, I always say it's like magical when it's like everything lines up. And I feel like it just goes to show you that our profession is one of the most important, and that we are probably one of the most flexible and open-minded when it comes to moving forward and really looking at where we are and still fighting the good fight and making sure that we're still doing what's best for our students, and making sure, number one, that they are being fed. I know we feed, I think we make 8,000 meals every Monday, our administrative team, and we give them out on Monday afternoon, making sure that they have the basic needs. Obviously, learning can't happen if they're hungry. Learning can't happen if they're not safe. So, making sure that we provide, our students with everything that they need that we possibly can. And I'm just really proud of how New Jersey really always steps up, and we're always a leader in educating our students and really supporting them.
Oh, thanks. You've got a lot of kudos there in the chat bar for sharing everything today. And maybe this next question from Lisa kind of tees up our post official PLC piece. So those of you who want to drop off, thank you for joining us today for the discussion. Leave a comment before you go in chat. We'll collect those as we go, but thank you for taking the time to join and share today. Lisa writes, if school begins with a virtual environment, what strategies and techniques are recommended to create a positive learning environment, create conditions for interactions and collaboration among students? And she also says, thanks for a great discussion. So maybe we could hand it to Kelly, I guess. We'll give you a little breather, Gina. We've been asking you a lot today.
Gina, do you need to go?
I'm gonna pop off because I just have to finish my email to the NJ.
I know you're crazy busy.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It was really fun. And anything else you guys need, I'm here for you.
Thanks for all that you do, Gina. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Take care.
So maybe Kelly, you could talk about how districts, and because you work across the country with different districts, even before COVID forced them into some of these different scenarios, how do you help districts feel comfortable handing students, quote unquote, over to you? I know it's not that. I know it is a collaborative environment, but districts may feel that it's they're handing it over, and how do they set that up with the parents and the students so that is a positive learning environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll touch a little bit on some of your first questions in terms of if this does go fully virtual for either some states, all states across the country, in terms of picking kind of back up where we left off in the spring. How do you create those positive learning environments, create conditions of interaction and collaboration with students? I'll kind of start there. And I think One of the most important things that we have seen and critical pieces to the success of the virtual implementation is knowing your families and knowing your teachers and having a really clear line of communication for that. And what I mean is one of the most important things will be to send surveys to your families. What does your home environment look like? What's the device availability? What's the internet connection? Just get a really clear picture of each family. And we do have sample surveys we certainly can send out to anybody that's interested that we created during COVID-19 and has since adjusted based on some feedback.
That would be excellent, because believe it or not, that actually came up at the very beginning of our call about the surveys, because New Jersey tried to do a state survey and they didn't do it very well. And the discussion came up about maybe districts should do their own surveys. So maybe if you provide me a couple of those, I can add them in our follow-up email to the attendees. That would really be helpful, Kelly. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. The one we have right now is for families. I certainly can put together some of the ones we have for teachers, because I think one of the missing pieces is also our teachers, right? In knowing our teachers. So if we do go fully virtual, let's even say that we go back and then we go virtual, and then, right, it's this kind of back and forth. We have, as district administrators, have to know our teachers. What is the home environment for the teachers? Because that means their kids are home. So do they have babies? And what's their device? And what's their internet connection like too? So it's just the same for knowing your teachers. If you're asking a teacher to do a live lesson every hour from, let's say, 9 to 1, and then have open office hours in the afternoon for questions, that might not be conducive to that teacher's life at home. And so that's the second important piece is we can't just survey the families. We also need to survey our teachers and be very clear that we're supporting both of those, and then have a very clear line of communication in setting up that virtual program for success. And then one of the most important pieces is having that voice, right? And so what do you do after you implement it? What's that communication feedback loop to where you can say, hey, is this working or isn't it working? Maybe it's working for some families and not for others, and why? And really then having a strong virtual advisory group of maybe some parents, maybe some teachers, administrators, kind of always looking through that feedback and identifying where are we doing a really good job and where do we need to continue to provide some support and or make adjustments or changes, and be okay with that, right? Communicate that out to all parties all the time as, hey, here's what we're going to do. We are going to continue to ask for your input and your voice, and we'll make adjustments as needed, because at the end of the day, we are all here for the same reason. And it's one thing that our students continue to thrive and learn. And as long as we are all transparent with each other and know that that's the end goal, we're doing something really great. So keeping that piece in mind. And then the second piece is really the professional development. I say that because it's passion. I'm very passionate about it. It's obviously a huge part of what I do as a director of the academy, is making sure that our teachers are experts and are continually being developed on new strategies, new techniques, what's coming, looking at the data, right? And so none of that changes when you go virtual. Districts, though, may need a little bit of help on that, because some districts are virtual experts, some teachers are, some aren't. Utilizing and figuring out who in your district is that expert and what sort of professional development can they provide, and then being open to asking outside people, hey, can you come in and help us develop our teachers so that we can continue to make sure learning is happening at a high level and high quality. And so that is something at Options Academy is currently offering now, is that professional development piece, to where, like that PLC, that virtual PLC. So that, Sheila, kind of touches on that. In terms of your second question, where can I expand that? I don't know if I really answered the second piece of your question in terms of
creating conditions for interaction and collaboration among students. So I know we talk a lot about the teachers and the Zoom, and so maybe just how do you at Options Academy help the students kind of make a connection?
Yeah, so with Ed Options Academy, we do a pretty darn good job of the engagement piece. It's an ongoing conversation because it evolves over time in terms of what that looks like. Every district is a little bit different. Every student is a little bit different. And so really looking at, in terms of what if I was just going to talk a little bit about pedagogy, what we do with our teachers and ensure is, we all know that it's really hard to go to either a meeting or a session if let's say we've already been to them and they're just kind of like sit and get. So we, the engagement piece is important. It's got to be fun. Just like if I'm going to walk into Mrs. Let's say Kelly's classroom, and I know that the first 5 minutes are going to be really awesome and we're going to do something thought provoking or exciting, I'm going to be really excited to go to that class. That becomes more important when you're virtual because you can't force the kid to come. At least when I'm in room 302, I know if that kid doesn't come, you know, he's somewhere or she's somewhere and we're going to go figure that piece out. Virtually, it's a little bit harder to make sure that they come through your door. And so we have to really think about how can we get these kids excited about tending live sessions or engagement opportunities. And so that's an art. That is an art that really requires a lot of professional development. On the academy side, that's what we're constantly coaching and developing and training our teachers on is how do you hook them in? Once you get them and they realize that you care and that you know what you're talking about and that there's going to be something really great that they're going to get from the end of this, and the pressure is a lot less sometimes in a classroom, they usually stay. It's pretty remarkable when we look at our research of the students that we can get at least in once, how they end up staying and coming to all of our sessions versus the kids that are really hesitant to come. And so it's being really intentional and transparent and really artistic in figuring out how do we get those, we call them disengaged learners, to start engaging. And the Academy does a really good job of doing that through live lessons, doing that through on-demand links. We play a lot of academic games. We'll talk about hot topics. Kids always love to have talk about topics, even little kindergarten kids. So tomorrow when you come to the lesson, we're going to have you share this or talk on this, and it gets kids excited, and then you can really dive into the content and the specific knowledge and learning skills that we want them to get throughout the course of their time with our teachers and our learning platforms.
Okay. So we've gone about 10 minutes over. Is there a specific question from the remaining participants that you would like to have Kelly address or answer or throw up for discussion? Otherwise, we might let Kelly go. And just to let you know, though, Matt, myself, and Dave and Lindsay are always available to have Kelly or one of her cohorts jump on a call if you have some specific planning that you want to talk about with us in your district or with your district teams as well. All right, so I just want to say thanks then for everybody joining. Thank you very much, Kelly, for joining. Apologize for the confusion there, but I'm glad we got it all worked out, and I appreciate everybody's time today. Thanks so much. Oh, here's one before we go. Gina, kids joining virtual meetings with their screens off is a big thing in our middle school. Making sure they keep them on, is that allowed? That's an interesting comment, Gina, because we actually have districts that have been on some of our previous PLCs that are wanting the opposite, trying to have the cameras off. So that I just think that's an interesting question. I don't know if you have a suggestion on that, Kelly, as a parting comment back out.
Yeah, so making sure they keep them on, is that allowed? So that's a hot topic. We actually had this in a lunch and learn with a couple of academy teachers last week in this topic of should we require them to be on camera, not be on camera. And that's hard. When they come into our classrooms, they can't hide themselves behind their hoods and bury their hands in their head. I mean, they do have to be seen and be an interactive participant in the brick and mortar classroom. And so should we make the expectation the same virtually is something that we're continually discussing. And some of the feedback that our academy teachers have shared in this lunch and learn is, in an ideal world, yes, right? We say you have to have it on. But what we forget is the home environment for kids can be very anxiety prone and not something they want their classmates or their fellow friends to see, whether maybe it's their house is dirty or it's really small or something going on. Maybe their parents are arguing or fighting and they don't want other kids to see. And so I think we have to be really careful with saying you have to be on camera. And what we're really coaching our teachers through is, hey, make the connection with that student and maybe say, hey, Kelly, can you just stay on? I have something really cool I want to share with you after this meeting. So once everybody gets off, can you just stay on really quickly? And then while that that young girl or boy is off camera, just say, hey, you know, Kelly, I just wanted to talk through the camera thing. I would love to see your face, and maybe see, just as I would in a classroom, if a student came in with their hood on and their earphones in and didn't want to participate and fell asleep in my class, I may not call that student out in front of their classmates, but when the period was over, I may just put my hand on their shoulder or say, hey, I got just a couple minutes. I want to share something really cool with you. Will you say it? You know, and then I can have that one-on-one connection and say, hey, Kelly, what's going on? You know, why do you want to disengage? Is it something I can help with? How can I support you? And so kind of making it that individual connection the same before we just demand that they're on video. Of course we want them to, because there's nothing more powerful than seeing someone's face and making that connection in that real life. But we have to be very cognizant that it might not just be as easy as they, you know, don't want to. And so just having those one-on-one conversations and trying to figure out um, really what that obstacle is in a safe and in a really safe way where we're not calling the child out.
No, very good point. Just the same way you would in a regular classroom.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it again for all your help today. And we continue. We have one more session that we'll be doing at the end of the month.